Borderlands 4, as everyone knows, looks like a woke, slop, DEI-infested disaster. Nothing almost about this game looks good, honestly. And after the first trailer, people were unhappy. Because if you remember the first trailer, then you know that not a single one of the main playable characters looked even remotely white. In fact, all of them were very, very visible black and brown. And after the first trailer, where people did not exactly like that, the push for useless diversity and DEI nonsense was turned up to 11, well, they turned it down. They took the dial and they turned it down and they said, no more blacks. Let's make them all white passing. And there you go. They Pedro Pascal'd everything. It is the most hilarious failure that I have seen in a long time, honestly.
Borderlands was one of the defining FPS franchises of the 7th console generation, and while the series has been around for over a decade and a half, a lot of people think it fell off after the console generation changed over, but
this is my favorite one, okay? Actually, let's just Borderlands 4 characters. Let's go. So let's find them. Okay, so here's all of them side by side, okay? Wait, actually, let me open the bigger. There we go. I should probably I should archive that page, okay? Sharing the screen. There you go. If you're wondering which of the characters is it, it's this one right there. The Riri Williams character, obviously. Look at this. This is the same character. This is literally supposed to be the same character. I mean, wokeness is a plague. What else can I say at this point?
over, but franchise developers Gearbox are teeing up for a massive comeback.
And by the way, obviously, for all the other characters, the same applies.
With Borderlands 4, which is not only locked in for a fall 2025.
Wait. I want to see this guy before.
Borderlands.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. How white he is compared to what he was previously.
Borderlands 4, which is not only locked in for a fall 2025 release, but it actually recently had its release date pushed forward to September 12th. And with the release date inching closer, we've been getting a ton of huge news and updates about what we can expect from Borderlands 4. And in today's video, we are going to go over absolutely everything you may have missed after the Borderlands 4 state of play. We have a lot to cover, guys, so check the video chapters for easy viewing.
You know what I think is going to be interesting about Borderlands? It's the fact that throwable objects are back, and you kind of have a grappling hook. Now, this is not going to be a negative about the game, but people who are going to play Borderlands a lot, more than the story and finishing the game, are not going to use any of that, probably, unless it's extremely overpowered to throw like a battle into something to kill a boss or whatever. But no one's going to use that otherwise, because those are fun mechanics. But so there's this thing in games and game design, I guess, in general, where fun mechanics are good and whatnot, but there is a risk to add them. I remember, this was, I think, 15 years ago. There was some kind of zombie-style horde shooter where you were supposed to grind on rails like Tony Hawk or something like that. And that was the thing you were supposed to do, and that was how you're supposed to play the game. And the maps were designed about, you know, rails being here, you going off over rooftops and things like that. And the thing is, when people played it, no one used that mechanic. The whole game was designed about that mechanic, but the reality is the developers forgot to add any real reason to want to use that mechanic, because you're shooting hordes of zombies. So what's the point of grinding like that if you can just sit in a corner and shoot the zombies? Yeah, and the game obviously died really fast because that's a obviously glaring flaw. You make the whole game around grinding, gliding, and doing all of those things, but the people playing it just sit in a corner because that's just simply more effective. And, that the same thing is going to happen with all these traversal options and things like that. People are probably just not going to use them really. It's going to be neat and it's going to be a cool thing, but people are not really going to use.
And let's get started. So jumping right into the new details, first things first, it's been
There we
confirmed
go.
recently that Borderlands 4 is going to have post
Like even this, like look at this. So you need to run to this battle, not shoot the enemies. Go kick this battle in an optimal angle, and then while the battle is flying, you need to shoot it. Okay? While doing this, you could have probably already killed all of them and just ran past them and been better. That's how these mechanics work. Now they're cool, don't get me wrong, but it's a point about these mechanics in general. They're kind of useless.
details. First things first, it's been confirmed recently that Borderlands 4 is going to have post-launch support to a pretty heavy degree, featuring at least 2 Vault Hunters joining the fray, as well as extended story content. Now, Gearbox has also seemingly
I wonder what's gonna be the skin color of these Vault Hunters. Ah, man.
confirmed that there will be both free and paid DLC released for the game. So with that being said, I'm expecting a ton of stability and balance patches, as well as free and smaller content drops for everyone in between the large or paid expansions, similar to how older Borderlands games handled their post-launch periods. It's not currently clear just how long the DLC season will be for Borderlands 4, but with at least 2 major hunters confirmed and some kind of story expansion, it seems that Gearbox has pretty big plans for it, which is really exciting.
I mean, Gearbox needs to have big plans for it because the last 2 Borderlands games failed. The movie fucking failed tremendously. So they kind of need this. I'm pretty sure the movie was to just drum up hype for Borderlands 4. Honestly, nothing really else, or the franchise in general, I should say. And yeah, well, that didn't work out. Now, did it?
With how long game development takes these days, it can be hard to determine just how long a game's DLC window is going to be, since expansions are also taking much longer to develop. But the too long didn't read of the situation is that Gearbox is absolutely not just going to drop the game and then just run away and start working on something else. They're going all out with the post-launch support, and there absolutely will be paid expansions. To give you an idea, Borderlands 3 received 6 paid expansions, I believe it was, and that was divided across 2 season passes. So that could be a similar amount of content that we get for Borderlands 4, or it could be a lot more. So moving right along, there's been another gameplay update that's been confirmed recently, and that is in regards to Mayhem modifiers, which were first introduced to Borderlands 3 on, I believe it was October 2019. That was a free update alongside the game's first major patch, and there were a bit of a divisive aspect of the gameplay. Now, in case you skipped Borderlands 3 or just haven't played it in a while, Mayhem modifiers were random effects that would take place that would shake up the gameplay during Mayhem mode. Similar to the skulls in the Halo franchise, some modifiers would impact your weapons, some would impact enemy health and behaviors, and so on and so forth. Now, these modifiers were only present in the Mayhem mode, but there was definitely a bit of a disagreement among the Borderlands community over whether or not they were a good addition to the game, because on one hand they greatly diversified the kind of encounters you could have with enemies, but on the other hand they added a lot of annoying RNG to the experience and also weren't nearly as refined or engaging as intentionally designed encounters. Now, this brings us to the news about Borderlands 4. The creative director of Borderlands 4 was recently asked on Twitter if Mayhem modifiers were going to be coming back in the upcoming game, and he responded very bluntly by saying this: "We have no Mayhem modifiers in Borderlands 4. These are just traits that are more inspired by the likes of other ARPGs that add little wrinkles to enemies to keep combat."
Oh boy, this is gonna be great. I hope they take all the modifiers from Diablo 4, aka the cast stupid ability on that modifier. I hope that they add that. That would be so funny. You know what's the worst modifier ever in gaming? It's on bosses. You probably haven't heard of this because, well, it's super rare that anyone does something this stupid. But it's a modifier on bosses where after killing them, they wipe the whole screen by exploding and you need to take cover, otherwise you die. That is the worst modifier ever. And obviously, any does thing that can kill you on that modifiers are absolutely horrible.
unpredictable and interesting, they're not punishing effects. So if you were worried about Mayhem modifiers randomly coming into the combat and throwing you off your rhythm, you can rest easy because they will not be in the new game. Now,
I don't like that kind of thinking, okay? If if you don't want anything to throw you off your rhythm, that means that, I mean, might as well give everything 1 HP and just see how much you can shoot shit. Because, well, that's kind of it, I guess. That's all you want, honestly, no? Obviously, that's kind of an oversimplification of, well, what that means. But, you know, I kind of don't like it because that implies that people just don't want to, you know, receive any adversity in the game. And I love when a game actually is at least somewhat hard.
before you had to play the Mayhem mode, which was only unlockable after completing the main story, so there was some separation. Now overall, Borderlands 4 is shaping up to be the more old school experience, it seems like, and much closer in design to Borderlands 1 and 2 than to Borderlands 3, which should come as great news to longtime fans because, let's be honest, I think most of us will agree that Borderlands 3 is where things started to go a little too far off the rails. And from the looks of it, Gearbox understands that and they're trying to get us back on the rails. I think the biggest thing for me is, like, I just want the Borderlands game that we had with Borderlands 2. I want legendaries to actually mean something. And with the legendary update that they're doing, it definitely seems like they're doing that. And I also want the story that's like intriguing, but not like fully filled with toilet humor that's just kind of cringe at times. I kind of look at it like this, like with the toilet humor and the comedy side of things, like when
Borderlands succeeded because Handsome Jack was a great villain.
Everything is supposed to be funny, then really nothing is. There has to be a middle ground. Like, you have to like weave or just like intertwine the funny moments in between the more serious moments. That way the funny stuff is more effective because it's not overused. And then in terms of the gameplay, it seems like they're going for a more classic approach, even though there are some evolutions to the game's movement and combat mechanics. However, there are some updates to the overall gameplay that might seem like a downgrade, which we'll get into right now. So one interesting thing that I've seen a lot in the gameplay clips is the lack of minimap, which raises a couple of questions about whether or not Gearbox actually got rid of it this time around. The minimap has actually been a point of conversation throughout the franchise's history, with some players arguing that it takes away from the experience, while other people argue that the minimap is an essential part of it. Now, every Borderlands game has several mods available on the
I like no minimap. I'm just like that. It's I think it's always interesting. Learning to navigate something is an accomplishment, and it feels good.
PC version that can change how the minimap behaves. So this is definitely part of the game that Gearbox seemingly would have put a lot of thought into, since there doesn't seem to be a solid consensus on what.
You know what I honestly miss? I miss games. I miss games where you had extremely hard layouts for things, and there was no mini map. You just needed to learn where the hell did you need to go to do what, and things like that. And you know what? That was rewarding. Again, overcoming things is rewarding.
What it should be like. But I'm bringing up the minimap because so far it seems like Borderlands 4 won't have one at all, given the fact that all of the gameplay we've seen so far doesn't have it. But let's be honest, I think they probably just disabled it. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that a Borderlands game launches without a dedicated minimap, but it would definitely be a departure from the formula over the last installments. But if I had to guess, I would think that the minimap is simply tied to a toggle in the settings, and Gearbox simply chose to have it disabled in the gameplay demonstration so you could see as much of the game as possible. The minimap has been a part of the experience for over a decade at this point, and I just don't think Gearbox would just delete it out of nowhere. It's a bold move and I'm kind of with it, but I'm almost certain that there will be some way to turn it back on in the settings, or perhaps there will be some gadget or ability that enables it, which I think one of the reasons why they didn't show it is you have Echo 4, the new robot in Borderlands 4, whose goal is to help assist you with traversal on the new planet. Now, similar to the Ghost in Destiny, this thing will provide you with a GPS-like line to your next objective with a press of a button. So it seems like they're replacing the minimap with Echo 4. Like, he's a GPS, he also.
You know what I would like better than this line? This line is a stable, everyone knows it, everyone has played with it. I find whenever I'm following a line like this, I kind of just feel like I'm doing nothing. I feel like I'm not playing the game. Maybe I'm alone at this, but I don't like the line, okay? Some form of navigation is fine. especially if it's a crowded room, highlighting an item that you need to pick up if it's a quest, that's fine by me. But I don't want a line, okay? Worst case scenario, I want like you press a button, a compass comes up and it points in the direction that you need to go. And it just points. It points in the direction that you need to go. And maybe when you get closer, it starts pointing up if you need to go up or something like that. I think those ways are the best to handle games like this. I like it personally, at least the best.
Also helps you hack.
But leave in the comments if I'm crazy and this is completely out of pocket and I should feel bad about myself.
Various terminals and machines, and will also help you scan the environment to locate, different objectives. So unlike the minimap, Echo 4's guidance system will reduce clutter and will offer a more immersive exploration experience rather than just like staring at the minimap to traverse the entire time. That being said, I think we should all be prepared for the possibility that Borderlands 4 just doesn't have a minimap because Echo.
Oh, Symbol. I didn't talk about this for like so many times, but I'm gonna just talk about
have
it.
a minimap.
Okay, let's get a good angle right here. Okay, so we have the pristine, clean white representation getting killed by the scruffy, rough-looking black person. Probably just, as a symbolism, as, against oppression. Well, considering these things are supposed to be like robots that fill tyrannical roles and things, and these guys are like the ones that are freed, the slaves. But listen, Borderlands 4 is going to be the vocest slop shit of a story you have ever seen. The whole story premises is literally built on the idea of white slaver and slaves that are fighting for their freedom. Yeah, that's going to be great.
Should all be prepared for the possibility that Borderlands 4 just doesn't have a minimap because Echo 4 replaced it, which is unfortunate to some, but if Echo 4 does everything that the minimap can provide, then I guess there's really no reason to have it. So yeah. So with the release date being pushed up, likely as a result to the development just going really smoothly, it does raise a few questions as to when you're actually going to be able to lock in your copy of the game through a pre-order. Right now, the pre-orders are not live, and sure, a lot of you probably don't care about pre-orders anymore since you buy your games digitally, and I totally get that. But then again, there are still a lot of you who like to buy your games physically, and Borderlands 4 is certainly going to have a physical copy available for purchase, likely alongside some sort of collector's edition for the game, and those things are going to sell out pretty quickly. Now, if I had to guess, I would say that Borderlands 4 pre-orders are likely going to open up during PAX East, which is currently scheduled to start on May 9th.
Woman savior, angelic figure. These are literally her broken wings, by the way. Literally her broken wings.
Going to open up during PAX East, which is currently scheduled to start on May 9th and is scheduled to have a full Borderlands 4 panel, which on their press release they said on the Gearbox Twitch channel on May 9th at 10 a.m. PT, 1 p.m. ET. We'll have an in-depth discussion about Borderlands 4 during that panel. They said during that Borderlands discussion, you'll hear from Gearbox President Randy Pitchford, the Global Creative Officer Andrew Reiner, Lead Game Designer Nick Thurston, and Associate Director of Narrative April Johnson, and Associate Creative Director Grant Coe, I think his name is, and they'll be talking about the recent gameplay deep dive, but they'll also be digging deeper into the world, characters, and mechanics of Borderlands 4. So not only are we going to be learning a ton of new information about the game itself at the conference, but we're also likely going to get our first official look at the physical copy, the collector's edition, and the pre-order options. So if those are things you've been looking forward to, make sure you're paying attention to PAX East this weekend because the Borderlands 4 deep dive is taking place on Friday, and it'll be held in the main theater room if you're planning on stopping by as well. With all this info dropped, I'm pretty...
Anyway, yeah, 10 out of 10, Riri Williams, 10 out of 10. That was West Nemo, 10 out of 10. Bye!